Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Kinetic Impressions. My name's Arnie.
I'm Andy.
And today we're going to talk about some movie news. All right, so specifically, if you know about the filmmaker David Cronenberg, he and Viggo Mortensen are poised to team up again for a follow-up movie to their last three movies together, which include History of Violence, and also, I forget the last one. It was a Dangerous Method. I'm sorry, Eastern Promises. Dangerous Method, and they're going to do another movie which kind of harkens back to David Cronenberg's roots of kind of body horror thriller type thing. Now, I was talking to my man Drew here a second ago, and he did mention to me that he had not really known about David Cronenberg. Now, if you're like a really big cinephile and you've are really into those real esoteric films from the 90s, you know about David Cronenberg's early work. Now, David Cronenberg kind of has this filmography that kind of moves across a spectrum. He has these movies that are really kind of existential horror movies, that are kind of bloody horror movies, that are in the vein of kind of Freddy Krueger, right? Where it's kind of like crazy, weird, body gory stuff, but it's also real heady and strange. But then he also has recently done these kind of like really solid thriller movies like A History of Violence. Well, if you've seen A History of Violence, which was a pretty popular movie back in the early 2000s, it's about Viggo Mortensen. He plays a guy that is living in this like small town America, and then it turns out that he had this massive past with the mafia, and it comes back to bite him as they find out where he is, and they come to collect on basically a life debt, right? And then he also does these movies like Cosmopolis and Map of the Stars that are really esoteric, kind of heady movies that are just kind of like, they're these verite films that are kind of strange, and almost you can't understand them, but when you really understand the layers of them, you kind of get them as well. He's a very wide-ranged kind of movie guy. He's got a ton of Oscar nominations, and he's gotten Oscar nominations for Viggo Mortensen as well. The reason I wanted to bring this up is because he is a very interesting director. Now, Drew, let me ask you this. Do you like Viggo Mortensen? Is there some good work from him?
Love Viggo Mortensen. Can't say enough about the guy. That's why I'm wondering like what rock I've been under, because I'm looking at all these movies too, and this guy works with some amazing talent. We're talking about Robert Pattinson, Paul Giamatti, Naomi Watts, Michael Fassbender. These are just few of the names that are just the top of the list of the most recent movies, and I'm like, what rock have I been under that I've not watched any of the Cronenberg movies? And I'm going to go out and watch some this week now, for sure. But I love Viggo. Viggo,
yeah,
man. And that's another thing. Viggo does not pick projects. He does not just like pick any project. He doesn't pick what's on the top of the pile. He really digs deep and he looks at them. I remember one of the first movies I really realized like that put me on the map for him was Captain Fantastic, and I thought it was a fucking wonderful indie film.
Captain Fantastic, okay.
And I just could not believe that I had never known about this guy.
For sure.
And so, that's recent. I mean, other than Lord of the Rings. I mean, like, I've seen him in all the Lord of the Rings, but like, that's
where he came from. That's the very first, like that was where Viggo Mortensen got on the map. Sure. Yeah, we got to give some props to Lord of the Rings for bringing some of these people to our attention for sure.
Yeah, and I think they just re-released they're going to re-release the 4K, right? Like,
oh yeah, I think I see an article about that. That's going to be awesome. It's going to be so cool. Yeah, I would love. I'd rewatch those movies like during like Thanksgiving and Christmas time for sure. I think it's like that's one of those things for people to do. I also really want to see the extended versions. I've actually never seen the extended versions of Lord of the Rings.
I bet you they're long.
Yeah. I think they literally legitimately add almost 40 minutes per, if not maybe like an hour on one of them as well.
It's not enough.
Yeah, it's not.
It's not enough walking. Jesus.
God.
I just think about the. Oh, never mind. I'm lost.
You're talking about the Clerks, right? The Clerks 2.
Yeah, I just think about the Clerks 2 line. That's all I think about, man.
For sure. So the biggest, like one thing, like the reason I think this is interesting, because if you know anything about David Cronenberg's films, recently he has stayed away from the body horror genre that he has been known for in the very, very past. So like one of the biggest ones that we know about is The Fly. He did The Fly. I think he wrote and directed. Well, I think that movie is actually a remake from an older movie, right? So if you think about Eastern Promises and History of Violence, right? Think about that mind going back to his body horror roots with Viggo Mortensen. And that just screams interesting to me. I want to read a quote from the article from Viggo Mortensen. This is what, so Viggo actually directed a movie that David Cronenberg did a cameo in. And he had this quote about what is the possibility of their working relationship in the future. So quote from slashfilm.com. However, a new interview with Viggo Mortensen provides some hope. Cronenberg has a small part in Falling, Mortensen's feature directorial debut, and while speaking to GQ, the actor was asked if he might end up starring in a Cronenberg movie again. He said, quote, yes, we do have something in mind, Mortensen said. It's something he wrote a long time ago, and he never got to make it. Now he has refined it, and he wants to shoot it. Hopefully, it'll be this summer, and we'll be filming. I would say, without giving the story away, he's going maybe a little back to his origins. Now, this is just like I really, so some really great movies of his that are like in that body horror realm. Yes, The Fly. There's this other one called Extends. That is just really, it's literally, it's called, it Extends actually, it has, I forget the guy's name. It's literally about a video game that these people inhabit, and these people that kind of go into a video game world, which is kind of like a VR world. And this guy gets a weapon that every time he shoots it, the weapon becomes more a part of his body. And it's about these guys trying to get out of that world. It's super heady, super gross, and just really thrilling, and just really weird in that world. And I really fascinated with him going back into that world with an actor like Viggo Mortensen. So it's just something that I wanted to bring up. It's super interesting. I hope it's good. Let me ask you this, Drew. Is there anything about this kind of heady thing that you'd be interested in seeing? I realize you haven't seen a lot of this, but think about The Fly and Viggo Mortensen together.
Exactly, all of it, man. I'm looking. I was just reading through synopsis and stuff like that, and like just the mind blowing stuff where he plays Sigmund Freud, and there's just some like really interesting dynamics in all his movies. Just reading synopses. Synopses, whatever.
Yeah, some of these movies are crazy. Like, there's one movie called Crash, which is not related to the early 2000s Crash.
It's the 1996 Crash. Yes, yeah. I've heard of this other Crash movie.
Yeah, so it's literally about these people who get sexual pleasure from actually going into car crashes.
Yes, and they're turned on. I watched this preview because I found this movie so fascinating. I was like, oh, I gotta watch this movie. So these have been on my list. I just didn't know. I didn't know this was all tied to the same person.
Same guy. Yeah, my guy. Yeah, I'm super excited to see what this is. Super excited to see like him go back to his roots. Because I'll be honest with you, Map to the Stars and Cosmopolis, I didn't enjoy. They're really heady films, and they're really like. There's this thing about these directors that came up in the late '90s, where they write some things that I just can't. I don't know what's the word here. I can't jive with. I can't jive with that kind of stuff. Like that. Like there's some David Lynch stuff that I can't jive with. There's some Cronenberg. There's some who's the guy who did Contagion? Steven Soderbergh. There's some like Steven Soderbergh stuff that I can't jive with. You know what I'm talking about? Like there's just some of those movies that they do that I can't really. Because it just feels like it's written real esoterically and strange, but I really want him to get back to his roots when it comes to the body horror stuff, and I'm really excited for this.
I'm intrigued with the body horror stuff, like the body horror stuff. I think that's going to bring it back. That's going to bring him back to like some really talented stuff.
Yeah, some of it is really like Shakespearean as well. Some of the stuff that because it's kind of like if you were to do like an old version of not Hunchback of Notre Dame, right? But with like a Shakespeare written on it, it's just like that's the kind of mindset that you have to get yourself into these kind of movies. It's real strange and just fascinating to me. Right on. I think we did it, my man. Thank you so much for watching, listening, or however you're doing what you're doing to see us. Please like, subscribe, comment. What are some really good Cronenberg movies that you like to watch? or tell us what you think this like melding of minds back to the old body horror stuff is going to bring up. What kind of things would you like to see? My name is Arnie. I have a podcast called The Arnie Diaz Show. It's also available, as well as the Kinetic Impressions podcast as well. You can go watch that or listen to that on any podcasting platform as well. I'm Arnie.
I'm Andy.
And what do we always say?
Go watch a movie.
Go watch a movie. All right.